Hi, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connection. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I'm delighted today to have a young woman who has been instrumental in looking at and bringing awareness to our community and more broadly around the issues of our environment. And certainly Greta Thunberg received all kinds of accolades and attention around the world for the work that she did. But we should recognize that there are teenagers in our community who are expressing the same types of concerns and have taken action with respect to those. And I'm delighted to have one of those teenagers with us today. Welcome, Allie Ho.
Hi, I'm Allie Ho.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Allie. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved and interested in environmental issues?
For sure. So I'm from South Surrey area. Now I am, but I was born in Seattle. We moved to Canada when I was about 2 months old or 1 month old. My parents are from Taiwan and they did their master's degree in America. Basically, I came here to South Surrey when I was about 13 years old, and I went to Semiahmoo Secondary, which is one of our local high schools.
Where I graduated from too.
For sure. Yeah, I just graduated from Semiahmoo this year, 2020, in pandemic time. We definitely had a very rough year. I was out of school in about March. But prior to this year, actually this year as well, but a lot more online now. But prior to 2020, 2019 was the year of climate protests and activism and a lot of youth getting involved. So me and my team would be Sustainabilities, and we cover Metro Vancouver area. We organized a bunch of the protests, the climate protests that happened in Vancouver, Burnaby, Surrey, alongside a bunch of other organizations. So how I got into it, how did I get into it? I'm pretty sure, I guess when I was growing up, I wasn't very versed on anything. I feel like as a second-gen immigrant or just growing up in a family of immigrants, we don't really acclimate ourselves to the political community of a new country. We're more like, let's just assimilate into this new country and not say anything about the current status quo. So I got into it pretty late. My parents were pretty against political speaking up or anything. They just felt as if it was unnecessary because it's great to be living here in Canada in the first place. But I got into it maybe in high school-ish. I was just thinking, oh wow, everything just not sucks, but there's so many things that could be changed about our community. And I didn't really know what activism was. I was just thinking first, okay, some people are getting treated unfairly, but then also climate was as a big standpoint. So I was just thinking, wow, there's just so much trash everywhere. And we're talking about climate change and how we don't have much time to live left on this planet unless it's all going to turn into fire. I was just thinking, damn, we could just change things. So I thought, okay, well, what can I do? So I wanted to start an environmental club. So I had this whole plan to get this compost program working at Semiahmoo, and just that was my big project. However, like when I came back from the summer that I was planning, this is 2018, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a club. I'm going to get this program started. Came to school, asked to start a club, and they're like, oh, there's already an existing environmental club. I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. So it was called Earthworks Club. And so I joined that one. And once I was in there, we ran the recycling program at school. And I was like, okay, we're going to do composting too. We also did native plant planting and invasive species removals and other little like battery recycling, clothes drives. We did stuff like that. But then as the year went on, this would be 2018, 2019 school year, I was thinking, okay, everything's great, but it's kind of pointless. What is the point of targeting the consumers? So if we recycle, if we reuse our clothes, like that's great. We're targeting the consumers as if it was a consumer's fault for all this waste. I was thinking, I felt so pointless doing all of this, organizing all these like beach cleanups, even though it's necessary, when the producers are still out there producing. What's the point of cleaning up after someone's crap when there's something doing the crapping?
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, something needs to institutionally change. How would I stop like Tim Hortons from using plastic cups in the first place? You can't just ask the consumers to say, okay, just stop buying from Tim Hortons. That some people want their coffee. So that's when I started thinking about activism. I was like, okay, this has to be some policy type of game. I have to talk to the companies directly. We have to get enough people to rally to sign a petition or something like that. And then that was just about February of 2019. And that's when Greta was a few months back, about September 2018. That's when she started striking. I didn't really hear about it, but by the time I also thought, okay, we got to do some stuff, there was this movement building. So I found it on Facebook. I found sustainability on Facebook. I was like, okay, it's time for me to get into the bigger fight. And I literally at this point, I did not know what activism was. We're not a political family. And so I messaged a Facebook group in about February, and I was like, hey, can I join? And then they're like, yeah, sure. We have a meeting coming up. Just like meet us at one of our strikes. And then I did. I became friends with all the organizing team. And then we worked on the next strike. And it was just really, really awesome. The community there was just the most welcoming community. And we were all imagining of just a better future. Something that was just way bigger than what I thought it was going to be. I didn't really know that I was stepping into this big movement, because all I was thinking about, okay, consumers changing to producers, let's just help this out. But like, damn, I was joining a worldwide movement, and something that would turn into the 2019's year of the youth climate protests. But it was really exciting. So that's the story of how I got into climate activism.
And then through school, and what are you pursuing at university? What are your goals?
My goals. Okay, so prior to this year, before I went to college, so I go to Amherst College, which is in Massachusetts. I guess for people around this area, like White Rock, they go, what is Amherst College? I just say it's the college where David Suzuki went to, and they'll be like, okay. But so it's a liberal arts college, and you don't really have to decide what you're studying until the end of second year. So I did consider environmental studies and political science. It just seems most natural to me. But since I've been there for a semester, I'm gonna look at other things. So I'm still considering political science and computer science. And environmental science, but now I'm considering computer science and engineering because I just have so much time and a lot of space to grow. And I feel like there's a lot of things that I am interested in. But my goals ultimately, I think at this point, is to go into politics, no matter what I major in. It doesn't matter if I'm in computer science or engineering. Like after bachelor's, I hope to get into the political field in whatever community that I'm in. I don't see myself staying in Amherst, Massachusetts. It's a very small town. I'd like to be in the heat of the action. So a big city would be lovely. Maybe I'll come back to Vancouver. Yeah.
You got to hang around Semiahmoo and the work that they're doing there too. So you're also a musician.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay. So actually, both of my parents are music teachers. My mom has been learning the piano since she was probably 3 years old, had her whole life set ahead for her. She's like, I'm going to be a professional pianist. And my dad, they both grew up in Taiwan, and a lot of traditional values is just like, okay, become a doctor, engineer, or what's the other one? Lawyer. So around his grade 11 time, his mom was like, okay, you're going to be an engineer. And he's like, okay. So he went into the engineering school, did his bachelor's in Taida, which is in Taipei. And so he did all his engineering stuff. But then once he got a scholarship for his master's to finish engineering, it was a scholarship to do anything he wanted. In his third year in like graduate school, he was like, oh, I have money now? And he switched right into music. So my dad plays French horn, my mom's a pianist, and my dad's now a band teacher. So I've been growing up in a very, very musical house. I started piano when I was very young. I don't know. I started classes when I was 5, but I was already playing along as a fetus, I guess, in my mom's stomach. So I did classical piano up until, let's say, grade 5 or grade 6 when band started. So I picked up the French horn like my dad, but I also picked up the trumpet in grade 8. And then 11, I picked up the acoustic bass. But along the way, I just love any instrument. I feel like when you play piano, you can really just play any instrument after that. So I was in the Semiahmoo jazz band. It was a really fun time. I was hoping that grade 12 we would have our last band trip, but we were supposed to go to New Orleans. However, due to the pandemic, that didn't happen. But we did go to our annual Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, which was really fun. We didn't win in 2020, but we definitely won in 2019, so that's good.
Well, certainly, if the current research done by David Epstein and others are talking about the future belongs to the generalist. So as you're wanting to look at moving perhaps into politics, certainly the rut that people get into when they specialize, they get sort of locked into a rut that they can't see what's happening around them. And those people that are having the majority of influence are people who can call on all kinds of experiences.
For sure.
Being able to look and study, whether it's music or environmentalism, whatever areas you want to get into, and whether it's engineering that you've made reference to in your studies, certainly all of those broad-based perspectives give you a vantage point to look at our world in different ways. And I think that's all to the advantage of looking at how we can change the world, and whether it's politics or whatever methods you might get into to enable to do that.
Sure.
So,
I totally believe that. I feel like whenever we specialize, it's really centered and you have a lack of vision. And I feel like when you want to affect change, you have to account for a lot of moving parts and just understand how the world works on a greater scale. And the more experiences you have, the more people you talk to, the more things you see, the more you'll see as in a vision or imagining a more equitable society. It's just understanding everybody around.
There's a website called innocentive.com where people post all the things they can't solve. And usually over 50% of them get solved, and they've got PhDs that are working on them, can't solve them. And somebody who's had some other experiences has been able to solve them. One of them going with the Exxon Valdez spell, and all the PhDs couldn't figure out how to get the oil that was globulating at the bottom of the ocean. They couldn't figure out what to do with it. And some guy who worked in cement said, oh, we've got this machine that you stick in it and the stick vibrates, and he won the award. So it's, again, how do we use our experiences and our vantage points to look at it?
For sure. Yeah, I was thinking, like, the more well-rounded I am, the more equipped I am to be able to solve anything. So I don't see much importance in me saying like, oh, I'm going to study political science in college, because I don't need to do that to go into politics. Like my friend Harrison Johnston, he ran for the Green Party in North Vancouver, and he's 20. Well, now he's 21, but he hasn't finished his college degree. But he's running for a seat, and there's just so many youth that are running for seats, and they just talk to people, and they have a genuine interest and vision for the community.
Yeah, and it's so wonderful to see and to hear about the youths in our community who are taking more responsibility, getting more involved, influencing change. And I read recently the United Nations Environmental Programs report. I think it was last month that it came out, and it talked about the gap in terms of global warming, and saying if we continue to have growth, if we see 2% growth Celsius, but by the end of the century, then it'll be catastrophic in terms of the issue. So it seems that we've got all of that information, yet the ability to get enough people involved to affect change. And whether or not the pandemic is going to teach us something about that, because we've seen premiers across Canada and people around the world saying, no, we're not going to shut it down because we need our economy to run. It seems to be the same dichotomy that we have when we're dealing with the environment, that we've got to change the way our economy runs and its basis and pollution and carbon based to a healthier. So how do you think we can be moving forward with that? What are the things that that people that you're working with and people your age can teach the rest of us about what we should be doing and the consequences that come from that?
I feel like first we need some sort of transparent, fact-based education for the first thing, because a lot of like in Econ 101 in college, at least in Canada, I mean, there's a lot of textbooks, but they're funded by the Koch brothers, like the textbooks, and they just want us to believe free market is the only way that we can survive economically. And they're obviously funded by people who love money. And I feel like this is very bad to how a lot of us perceive the world, because it's so hard to imagine a world without capitalism. Like I can't even imagine myself. You have to think so hard, like how do we live in a world where someone can't get wealthier? Not wealthier, everyone can be wealthy. Like how do we imagine a world without money? I'm not saying we should have a world without money, but it's just so hard to imagine because it's so ingrained into us. So I first think that we need to try to just have like think tanks of how different we want our society to be. And I forgot the question, to be honest.
Well, I think you've started to elucidate the response to it, but certainly if we look in the United States, where money dictates so the whole political process, it's all about fundraising. At least in Canada, we have a limit. You can only give like $1,600 and you're cut off. So there has to be a different approach to how we deal with things. And I think when you're talking about a world without money or that type of equity, certainly some of the research showing that sort of 1% of the population now has over 40% of the wealth that exists. So, so we've got 60% that have got virtually minimal amounts within that. So how do we have that equitable approach that allows us to do that? And the same thing I think applies to, as we're talking about environmental issues, how do we move forward with that? And certainly the insights that you're getting are helping to educate all of us, I think. And we're looking towards your generation to be able to teach us more, to help us affect that change, to create the quantum we need for that to happen. And it seems that some people don't listen to information or evidence or research. People seem to be look for outcomes that rationalize what they already believe. So it's so difficult to impact that type of change. I know.
Exactly. And I feel like I don't want the person listening to this be like, oh, if I say the word socialism, I don't want them to have like, oh, this is a bad thing because we've been taught to think that socialism is bad, or the word feminism is bad. It's the same language that a lot of people put bad connotations around. So when talking about socialism, I'm not talking about like everyone has no incentive to work at all, but we're talking about a community. We're talking about a community that can work together, and someone just can't get too rich. Someone can't exploit off the poor. I'm not sure. I really just don't know why people like a society in which the rich can feed off the weak and make the poor poorer and the rich richer. The only people that I would understand that like this concept are the people who are already rich or have a plan to conquer. And those are power hungry people. But when talking about socialism, I'm talking about the community helping each other. Like your neighbor, it has to be your friend. So I feel like a big difference between Canada and America, just like living there for 3 months now, this past semester, everyone's really regimented as in, okay, don't touch my property. Don't come over here. You're like not my friend. Like I'm able to shoot you if you're on my property. And that's just, it's crazy to me. But Canada, it's just a little lighter, but it's too kind of similar in that I don't care what's happening in this house. It's not my problem. But I feel like we need to have more of a collective community, as in like, okay, a thought process I talked about with my friend the last week was, would you ever mow your neighbor's lawn? Just like maybe someone would be like, oh no, I'm not gonna mow my neighbor's lawn. Why would I do that? But then what if they mowed your lawn like last week? Wouldn't you feel like you want to mow their lawn too? What if neighbors mowed each other's lawn just because maybe one neighbor's like, oh, I'm mowing my lawn today. Maybe I'll just do the whole entire neighborhood's. And it's like, oh, that makes everyone's life a little better because he was already doing it. Now maybe in this 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 cul-de-sac, or maybe we just have one lawnmower. Now we don't have to spend more on getting multiple lawnmowers when you only need one. And that's just like the beauty of collective society.
Ironically, you should say that because my neighbor often mows my lawn and just wanders over and does it. And we have a wonderful neighborhood in this area, and everybody knows each other and cares about each other and supports each other. So it's pretty neat to have that type of social connectedness that means so much. And being able to, as you're articulating that, be able to take that principle and expand it so that it could become community-wide, province-wide, national, or maybe international. Maybe those are some of the values that we need to find ways to realize.
Like what if countries would help each other in the same way so we could all progress instead of trying to attack one for its resources or this or that? Because as we know, throughout history, in every case, we do so well when we work together. Humans are a collective species, so why don't we just stop the fighting?
Yeah, and the principle of the United Nations was to help do that. And I understand Canada has actually bought a number of extra vaccines to share with poorer countries, and hopefully, I imagine there are other countries that are doing the same thing. So that those little things are helpful in terms of the values that you're reflecting. I think helping to operationalize those in some ways.
Yeah. So I think like a big thing, a next step is just being able to access this information without propaganda being poured into our ears. And maybe I'm on the spectrum of this political leaning side, and maybe I don't I'm not fully educated either. For me, I see this as, hey, this makes everyone's life easier. It's more harmonious. It's just happier. I see this as a happier way of living. So I don't see any downfall to this way of living. It's been proved and done. This is how humans have lived in the past, in small communities where everyone works with each other. It's just trying to figure out a system for a huge, huge population, which is, I guess, something that humanity hasn't been doing for a very long time yet.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at what's happening with democracies around the world, there seem to be, in some ways, declining. There are fewer democracies today than there were 25 years ago, and even the number of people that participate in votes, and certainly with social media, there seems to be so much more divisiveness. Those people who are tended to be on the fringe in the past now they can connect with others through social media, and we're seeing a growth in that. And certainly what we're seeing in the United States now, with the great division that exists there.
Yeah.
And the systems of power that in the republic are so dramatically different than the Commonwealth democracy.
It's crazy. So I was in DC about 3 weeks ago. I lived there with my friend for about 3 weeks, and we went to one of the protests on the Black Lives Matter Plaza. So the Proud Boys, which is a white male patriarchal Republican, pro-Trump, anti-masker group that believes that Trump didn't lose the election. So basically they were marching to Washington, D.C. for, what's it called again? Take back the vote or steal the, I did not pay attention to the slogan. But basically we were there, and it was really crazy because I saw the scene of, there's Proud Boys, and on one side of the street, the police are protecting the Proud Boys, while the counter protesters like me, who don't like fascism, who don't like the white hierarchy, anyone who was just for Black Lives Matter, for environmental justice, for anything, is on this side. And then the police are protecting the guys with knives, with no masks, and the people who are willing to hurt people. On this side, we have people with just protective gear. They have helmets because they know the police, they brutalized them. I was there and I videotaped it. There was mace. There was just, the police were the one with the weapons, obviously, and then the Proud Boys had weapons. It was just such a weird scene to watch, because it was like, it was definitely a war. It looked like a war. It's crazy. And I know a lot of my friends in America would be like, I could never be friends with a Republican, or a Republican would be like, I could never be friends with a Democrat. It's just, you never saw it. And yeah.
So where do you, from your vantage point and from the experiences you've had, where do you see our world 25 years from now? What type of things do you think, if there aren't changes, it'll be like, and what are the changes that are necessary for us to get to the kind of world, or at least the kind of country and community that you're expressing the values for?
Well, first, I know that we can't go back to the way it was. It's the way it was is so damaging to so many communities, because all these issues that we have, climate justice, racial justice, just destroying imperialism and capitalism, is all the same thing. It's all interconnected. And so I see, at least within the next 10 years, there's going to be a big revolution. And today is January 2nd, 2021, where a lot of people are saying, 2020 is over. 2021 is going to be better. I don't know why people think that, but I think 2021 is going to be not worse, but I mean, it could be worse. It really could be. But I think we're at this point where it needs to be bad so we can grow. Just historically, everything that's happening now is really bad, the pandemic and a lot of death. But I feel like this is the crux in which young people and older people, even, like, no one has to be at any age to enact change. We just have to get off of our seats and do our work. And as we were talking about democracy, how it's like backsliding currently, it's because democracy is fragile. And I feel like it's everyone's job to do the work for the next 10 years, not drop everything you have to do, but get to a point where you can change your community, because we're creating a different world that is more equitable for all. And I hope that is the future that we see in 25 years. It'd be lovely to eradicate racism. It'd be lovely to have a climate plan that can save the world, whatever that means, because we're already in a place that a lot of things are already dying, a lot of environmental damage has already been done. But I hope that in 25 years that these will be problems of the past, and we'll look back in 2046 and think, wow, remember when climate change was gonna kill us all? I can't believe you would be killed for being gay.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you're describing is that I think that certainly Canada needs to grow, and we're proudly multicultural and pluralistic in our approach. But I think as you look at people all over the world, whatever culture, we all seem to care about the same things. We care about family and community and being able to find better lots in life. And those values are consistent around the world. And if we can get grounded in those principles and could grow through those, then and one of the ironies I think about democracy is that it's there to attack. It's there to have that dialogue. It's not dictatorial. It's you can engage with it. But some of the misinformation and dialogue that we're seeing is so inappropriate and so far removed from those values.
The misinformation is crazy, because I forgot who said this quote, but it says the most powerful act of democracy is to protest. And it's crazy that the misinformation now that is spread across the world is that if you protest, this is terrorism, this is a blasphemy, what are you doing, trust our government. No, protesting is democracy.
And it's a constant struggle. I think that's a wonderful way of putting it, for describing that protesting and how important that is. So we're getting close to the end of our time. Allie, any final comments you'd like to make, or messages you want to leave to people 20 years from now, or 2 years from now?
Let's see, I'm going to be back in, maybe I'll see this in 25 years and look at a young me. I first hope that as a young person, as an 18-year-old right now, I am historically and by pattern at a point in my life where one does the most societal work before we burn out, before we turn 20 and be like, oh, I need to start a family now. I need to settle down and get a job and just succumb to the system. And I just hope that in 20 years that doesn't happen to me, that I stay active, that I hope we all stay active and realize that it's not a certain point in our lives that we can do this action. It's until we die, honestly.
Yeah.
So I tell everyone, I guess, please just go out and do your part. Whatever you think is better for the world, then I think we should do it. I think you should do it.
That's well said. And I think 50 years ago, we sort of learned for the first third of our life, we worked for the second third, and we relaxed for the third third. And I think that's dramatically different now. We have to do all three of those till the end of our life.
For sure.
Concert and doing it. And I think your message says that exactly. Thank you so much, Allie. I've got great confidence in you and in your generation for continuing to improve our world and making it possible for future generations to be able to realize their goals and their dreams, and counting on you to do that. Thank you so very much for being a guest on Community Connections. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.